Yo guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell. So for today's tutorial, I'm gonna teach you guys how to shade realistic skin tone from realistic hair and clothes. So first, we have to prepare our outline. Then I'll explain what are the materials that we are going to use. These are the graphite pencils that I'm using in my realistic drawings. For the extreme dark parts of the drawing like the eyes, nostrils, eyebrows, hair, and clothes, I use the Staedler black pencils, especially the 8B pencil. I recommend using Staedler blue for shading skin tone because it will give you a really smooth skin tone after smudging or blending it. So we have here the brushes we need for blending smooth skin tone and for drawing hair and clothes. Most of these are makeup brushes, and some are flat brushes. I put a masking tape around the bristle of the brush so that it will become compressed, therefore easily absorb charcoal powder. I have here my DIY pointed brush that I've cut using my scissors. Having a number 1 flat brush is essential for adding details when using charcoal powder. This one is flat makeup brush. I use it for applying charcoal powder to make realistic hair. This one is just a cotton that I attach to my artist knife using a tiny stick and a masking tape. And these are the makeup brushes that I use for shading skin tone and drawing hair. It is important that you have a one brush dedicated for brushing away the dust that comes after erasing some parts of the drawing. This one is called pencil eraser. It is an eraser made of rubber, commonly mounted at one end of a pencil. This one is mono zero eraser. Same purpose as a pencil eraser, for erasing details and highlights. Meanwhile, this one is called kneaded eraser. It is a tool for artists. It functions by absorbing and picking up graphite and charcoal particles, meaning it is best to use to correct the shadings in your drawing. On the other hand, this one is a jelly roll pen. It is used to add highlights, such as in eyes and lips. And if you don't have this one, you can use a correction pen as an alternative. There are different types of charcoal. This one is called compressed charcoal. If you don't have a charcoal powder, you can just powderize it by using a sandpaper. I use this one in making realistic hair. On the other hand, you can buy a charcoal powder like this one. I use this one in shading skin tone along with the use of brushes. Using my sharp 8B Staedler pencil, I began shading the outline of the eyes first, like the eyelids, pupil, and the iris. It is important to keep the lead of the pencil sharp for details, and just apply a little pressure while shading the first layer, so that if something goes wrong, we can easily erase and adjust it. Note: when shading the iris, do not settle it on parts where you will apply highlights. After that, I use my DIY pointed brush and dip it to my charcoal powder. When using charcoal powder in a brush, it is important to have a scratch paper to remove excess powder and to check its consistency. Then, apply the pointed brush dipping the charcoal powder on the darkest areas of the eyes, like the pupil and the outer lines of the iris. Here you can see me using my F pencil to shade the first layer of the skin tone. After a series of layering with my F pencil, 4B pencil, and 6B pencil, I use my brush dip in the charcoal to blend it smoothly. Later, I will teach you how to use it. In drawing the eyebrows, I use my 8B pencil to follow the flow of the hair strands, and later blend it with my flat brush dip with the charcoal powder. After a series of layering using graphite pencils, I use a cotton to blend the skin tone. In using cotton, you must blend in circular motion. Then add the highlights to the eyes using signo or jelly roll pen, or even a correction pen will do. Then use the 8B pencil to remove the excess highlights. In drawing the nose, I began slightly shading the nostrils with 8B pencil. And using F pencil, I applied the first layer of the skin tone. As you can see, I'm avoiding shading the highlighted part. Then, using my pointed brush, I blend the nostrils, and with a round makeup brush, dipped with charcoal powder, I smudge the first layer of the skin tone. After shading the base tone, I started using my 4B pencil for applying the midtones. Then later on, I will smudge it using a brush. After that, use 6B pencil for the dark tones, and just repeat the same process. And if you're not still satisfied with the result, just keep layering until you're satisfied. It is important to preserve the highlights so that later on, you can adjust and erase it using a kneaded eraser. In drawing the lips, I started rendering the first layer using a 6B pencil. Then blend it with my flat brush, dip in the charcoal powder. Then I use my kneaded eraser, pencil eraser, and jelly roll pen to add the highlights on the lips and teeth. The secret in shading realistically is to shade from light to dark and do it by layer. So guys, if you want to shade realistically, don't be afraid to add dark contrast or shading to your drawing because it will make the drawing more realistic and pop up. When shading skin tone, it is important to start from light going to dark. For the first layer, I'm using a F pencil. Just hold the pencil at the tip and start rendering a slanted line while putting a little amount of pressure onto it. As I said earlier, when using charcoal powder and a brush, it is important that you have a scratch paper to remove excess powder and to check its consistency before adding to the drawing. For the base tone, shade the whole area first, even the highlighted part, because even though it is highlight, it doesn't mean that it is pure white. It does also have a light shades of gray. And for the midtones, I use a 4B pencil to shade the whole area, but leave the highlighted areas untouched, because the base tone will now serve as the highlights later on. After rendering using 4B pencil, blend it with a round brush dipped with the charcoal powder in a circular motion. After that, use 6B pencil for the darkest value of the skin tone. And just repeat the same process but don't shade the highlighted areas so that we can preserve it later on. If in case something goes wrong, use your kneaded eraser to pick up the graphite and charcoal. Then after erasing it, blend it out using a brush or cotton to make the erased part look more naturally. I just repeat the same process for shading skin tone. After rendering the first layer, it is important to note that you must blend it smoothly before adding the second layer. To blend it smoothly, use a brush or a cotton or even a tissue and smudge it in a circular motion. Just remember to preserve the highlights. When you are finished with the base tone and the midtones, just keep adding layers using 6B and blending it with a brush and cotton or tissue until you're satisfied with the skin tone. And after that, I use a powder brush to blend a large portion of skin tone and to make it more smoothly. Drawing hair, I use a charcoal powder in a brush and directly apply it to the hair. When using charcoal, you must take your time and be cautious, otherwise it will become a mess. I keep adding layers of charcoal powder to the hair until it becomes dark enough. In drawing hair, I use the dark to light technique. When using charcoal powder, do not be afraid to make it dark enough, because later on, we will use eraser to pick up the charcoal and make highlights. After filling out the hair with charcoal powder, remove the excess powder using a kneaded eraser. Then after that, I use a glue stick to start making the highlights. In using glue stick, just hold the glue stick slantly and erase using its edges. Just repeat the same process all over again until you're finished. After erasing the highlights using the glue stick, I use my makeup brush, dip it in charcoal powder, and blend it to the highlighted area to make it more look naturally. After that, I use my mono zero eraser to add highlights again. Don't have this one, you can just use again your glue stick to add highlights. When adding highlights, it is important to follow the flow of the hair based on your reference. After using a monosyl eraser, I use again my brush tip with the charcoal powder to blend it. Then after that, I use my 8B black staedler to add the highlights and the hair strands. In drawing the hair strands, it is important to keep the pencil sharp and just follow the flow of the hair. In using 8B pencil to create the strands, avoid the highlights that you made earlier. Don't forget to add the details or the stray strands to make it more realistic. For the tiny stray strands, I use my 2B black pencil or even the 6B black pencil. You can also use the mechanical pencil when adding stray strands. In drawing the clothes, I started rendering with a 6B pencil. After rendering with a 6B pencil, I smudge it with a brush dipped with a charcoal powder. After a series of layering using my brush, I use my pointed brush to add details. I just repeat the same process on the other side of the clothes. For adding the details and highlights, you may use a jelly roll pen or even a pencil eraser. As you've seen in my reference earlier, the shading of this cloth is very light. Instead of rendering using graphite pencil, I started filling out the whole area with my brush, deep with the charcoal powder. Just keep adding layers and layers because later on, we will erase for the highlights. Also, as you can see, I'm always avoiding the highlighted part, so it will be preserved later on. After you're satisfied with the tonal values, pick up your pencil eraser or mono-zero eraser and create highlights. After erasing highlights, pick up your brush and blend it to make it more look naturally. Using my pointed brush dipped with the charcoal powder, I add details. And if you don't have this one, you can always use your pencil instead. Just repeat the same process all over again until you're satisfied with the result. In adding light background, I started rendering using my 4B pencil and smudge it using a tissue. After smudging using tissue, I use my powder brush to blend it more smoothly. After that, don't forget to retouch your work by adding details and highlights. And this is the finished product. Comment down below what tutorial should I do next. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.